Rain hammered against the windows of the downtown bus as Naomi Rivers clutched her worn portfolio against her chest. March in Seattle meant endless gray skies and puddles that reflected the city's cold indifference. She had exactly $43 left in her checking account. Her interview at Hart Technologies was her last real chance before the eviction notice became reality. 3 months ago, she had been a junior architect at a promising firm. Then, the layoffs came like a storm, sweeping away her salary, her health insurance, and her father's medical treatments all at once. The bus lurched to a stop 2 blocks from her destination. Through the foggy window, she could see the Hart Technologies building rising like a monument to success. Glass and steel reaching toward clouds that seemed determined to keep everyone below in perpetual shadow. She stepped off into the rain, her umbrella broken from last week's windstorm. Cold water soaked through her jacket within seconds. Then she heard it. A sound that split the morning apart. Metal grinding against asphalt. A woman's scream cut short, tires shrieking as they fought. For control on wet pavement, Naomi turned just in time to see a black sedan spin wildly across the intersection. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing in the same breath. The car mounted the sidewalk and struck a man crossing the street with devastating force. His body flew backward, landing in a crumpled heap against the brick wall of a coffee shop. People scattered like leaves in wind. Car doors slammed. Someone shouted about calling the police, but nobody moved toward the fallen man. Nobody except Naomi. Her legs carried her forward before her mind could process the decision. Her portfolio dropped into a puddle, pages of carefully prepared architectural drawings floating away like paper boats. She fell to her knees beside him, rain mixing with blood that pooled beneath his head. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and rattling. She pressed her hands against the wound on his temple, her fingers slipping in the warm wetness. Her own heart thundered so loud she could barely hear the sirens approaching from somewhere distant. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." Her voice shook as she spoke to him, this stranger whose life was leaking out onto the cold sidewalk. Around her, people held up phones recording everything, but not one person knelt down to help. His eyelids fluttered. For just a moment, his gaze found hers. Dark brown eyes unfocused, but somehow still present. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then consciousness slipped away from him like water through fingers. The paramedics arrived in a blur of red lights and urgent commands. Strong hands pulled her back as they worked. Someone wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. A police officer asked for her statement, and she gave it in a voice that sounded like it belonged to someone else. Her hands were covered in blood. Not her own. His. The ambulance doors closed with a finality that echoed in her chest. She watched the vehicle disappear into traffic, carrying away a man whose name she did not know. The rain continued falling as if the world had not just tilted on its axis. She looked down at her watch. The face was cracked, frozen at the moment of impact. She had missed her interview by 27 minutes. The aftermath of Compassion Naomi sat in the coffee shop across from where it happened. The manager had taken pity on her, offering a towel and a cup of tea she could not taste. Through the window, she could see workers hosing down the sidewalk, washing away the evidence, making the street clean again as if violence had never touched it. Her phone buzzed, an email notification. She opened it with trembling fingers still stained pink despite multiple washings. Dear Naomi Rivers, thank you for your interest in Hart Technologies. We regret to inform you that we have selected another candidate for the junior architect position. We wish you success in your future endeavors. She read it twice before the words actually registered. Then she let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Of course. Of course, this was how the universe worked. Save a life and lose the one chance to save your own. The manager approached her table with gentle concern. You okay, honey? You need me to call someone for you." Naomi shook her head. "I am fine. Really. Just need a minute." But she was not fine. She was drowning in a city that did not care if people like her disappeared beneath the surface. She gathered what was left of her portfolio. Most of the pages were ruined, ink bleeding into abstract patterns that looked like grief made visible. She left the coffee shop and walked home through streets that seemed longer than before. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her apartment was small and cold. The heating had been shut off last week. Past due bills covered the kitchen table like accusatory letters from a judgmental God. She sat down on her second-hand couch and let herself cry. Not the pretty kind of crying from movies. The ugly, gasping kind that came from a place too deep for words. Her phone rang. Dad calling. She almost did not answer. Almost could not bear to hear his voice weakened by illness and worry. But she picked up because that was what you did when someone you loved needed you. "Hey, sweetheart. How did the interview go?" His voice carried hope that felt like broken glass in her chest. "It did not happen, Dad. Something came out." "Naomi, what happened? Are you okay?" "I am fine. Really. Just tired." "When are you coming home?" "I told you. You can stay with me until things get better. I cannot leave yet. Something here feels unfinished." He was quiet for a moment. "That is my stubborn girl. Just like your mother. Stay safe out there. Promise me. I promise." After hanging up, she sat in silence, broken only by the drip of a leaky faucet. The man from the accident filled her thoughts. She wondered if he had survived. Wondered if he had family waiting by a hospital bed. Wondered if anyone had told them about the girl who stopped when everyone else kept walking. The evening news played on her laptop. She almost did not watch. But then the anchor's voice cut through her exhaustion with words that made her sit up straight. Breaking news tonight. Tech billionaire Julian Hart was seriously injured in a hit-and-run accident downtown this morning. Hart, founder and CEO of Hart Technologies, remains in critical condition at Seattle Medical Center. Witnesses say a young woman stopped to help before paramedics arrived. Police are asking that woman to come forward. The room spun. Naomi stared at the screen showing file footage of Julian Hart speaking at a conference. The same face, the same dark eyes that had looked at her from the sidewalk. She had saved one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the Pacific Northwest and lost everything doing it. She laughed then, a sound edged with hysteria, because of course she had. Of course. The universe would write this particular joke. Save a billionaire while losing your last $43 and any hope of paying rent. Outside her window, the rain finally stopped. The city lights reflected in puddles like fallen stars. Somewhere across town, Julian Hart lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that breathed for him. And somewhere in between his world and hers, a connection had formed that neither of them understood yet. Fate had a strange way of tying people together through moments of crisis. Naomi did not believe in destiny, but sitting there in her cold apartment with blood still under her fingernails, she could not shake the feeling that this story was far from over, that saving his life had somehow become tangled with saving her own. She just did not know how yet. 4 days passed before the knock came. 4 days of Naomi sending out applications that disappeared into the void. 4 days of rationing the last box of pasta in her cupboard. 4 days of wondering if the man she had saved even remembered her face. The knock was firm but polite. 3 measured taps that somehow sounded expensive. Naomi opened the door to find a woman in her early 30s wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she carried a leather briefcase that gleamed under the hallway's fluorescent lights. "Miss Rivers, my name is Victoria Chen. I work with Julian Hart. May I come in?" Naomi's heart jumped at his name. Is he all right? Is he okay? Victoria's expression softened slightly. "He is recovering, and he would very much like to meet you. That is why I am here." Naomi glanced back at her apartment, at the stack of bills on the table, at the eviction notice taped to her refrigerator, at the second-hand furniture and peeling paint that screamed poverty louder than words ever could. "I am not really prepared for visitors. Mr. Hart is not concerned with your living situation, Miss Rivers. He is concerned with thanking the person who saved his life." Victoria's tone was gentle but direct. "We have a car waiting downstairs. If you are willing, we can take you to see him now." 20 minutes later, Naomi found herself in the back of a town car that smelled like leather and possibility. Victoria sat beside her, typing on her phone with efficient precision. The city looked different from behind tinted windows. Cleaner somehow. Less harsh. "Can I ask you something?" Naomi's voice was quiet. "How did you find me?" "Hospital records showed your name from the police report. After that, it was just a matter of research." Victoria looked up from her phone. "Julian has been asking about you since he regained consciousness. You made quite an impression. I just did what anyone would do. Most people did not." Victoria's eyes held something that looked like respect. "The security footage showed 47. People walked past him before you stopped." 47. The words settled heavy in the space between them. Naomi watched Seattle slide past the window and said nothing. The meeting that changed. Everything. Seattle Medical Center was all white walls and antiseptic smells. Victoria led her through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. They took a private elevator to the top floor, where the rooms had actual doors instead of curtains and windows that overlooked Elliott Bay. Julian Hart was sitting up in bed when they entered. His head was bandaged, and his left arm was in a cast, but his eyes were alert and focused entirely on Naomi the moment she walked through the door. He was younger than she expected, maybe 35. His hospital gown somehow still looked dignified. "On him, Miss Rivers." His voice was stronger than she anticipated. "Thank you for coming." Naomi stood awkwardly by the door, suddenly aware of her worn jeans and jacket with the missing button. "How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a car." He smiled slightly. "But alive, thanks to you. The doctors did the real work. I just kept you company until they arrived. You did more than that." Julian gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Please sit. I promise I do not bite. Hospital food has made me too weak for that." Despite herself, Naomi smiled and sat down. Victoria excused herself quietly, leaving them alone in the kind of silence that felt full rather than empty. "The police told me you were on your way to an interview at my company." Julian's expression turned serious. "That you missed it because of me. It was not your fault. Someone hit you and drove away. That is on them, not you. But you stopped, when you had every reason to keep walking." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "Why?" Naomi thought about it. About all the reasons people do things. About the 1,000 small choices that led to that moment on that sidewalk in the rain. Because someone had to. Because leaving you there felt worse than missing the interview. Because maybe I needed to remember that I was still the kind of person who stops. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for the tablet on his bedside table and tapped something on the screen. "Tell me about yourself, Naomi. What kind of work were you interviewing for?" "Junior architect position. I studied design at University of Washington. Worked at Sterling & Associates for 2 years until they downsized." She tried to keep her voice steady. "Been looking for work ever since." "How long?" 3 months now. Almost 4. That is a long time to be searching." He watched her face carefully. "What have you been doing to get by?" "Odd jobs. Some freelance drafting work when I can find it." She did not mention the nearly empty bank account, the eviction notice, the medical bills for her father, that kept piling up like accusations. I manage. The offer that seemed too good. Julian set down the tablet and looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. I want to offer you something. Not charity, not pity, an actual position. Naomi's throat tightened. You do not have to do that. I did not help you expecting anything in return. I know. That is exactly why I am offering. He shifted in bed, wincing slightly. Hart Technologies has a small foundation. We focus on community development projects, affordable housing, public spaces, sustainable architecture. I need someone to coordinate between our architects and the communities we serve. Someone who understands design but also understands what it means to struggle. Someone with compassion. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge being built in real time. I do not have experience in community outreach. Naomi's voice was barely above a whisper. But you have something better. You have empathy. You stopped when everyone else walked away. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could. He paused. The position pays $65,000 a year, health insurance included. You would start next week if you are interested. Naomi felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them back hard. Why are you doing this? Because 4 days ago I was lying on a sidewalk dying, and the only person who cared was someone who had everything to lose by stopping. Julian's voice was quiet but firm. Because I built my company on the idea that success means nothing if we do not help others climb too. Because you reminded me why I started this in the first place. She looked down at her hands, at the fingers that had pressed against his wound, at the nails still faintly stained despite scrubbing. I do not know what to say. Say yes. Say you will give it a try. If it does not work out, no hard feelings. But I think you will be good at this. Better than you know. Outside the window, the sun was breaking through clouds for the first time in days. Light spilled across Elliott Bay, turning the water silver and gold. Naomi thought about her father waiting for treatment he could not afford, about the eviction notice on her refrigerator, about the way Julian was looking at her now, not with pity, with respect. Okay? Her voice was stronger this time. Yes, I will do it. Julian smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Good. Victoria will handle all the paperwork. You start Monday. Welcome to Hart Technologies, Naomi. When Victoria returned, she found them talking about sustainable building materials and community gardens, about the way cities could be redesigned to support people instead of just profit. The conversation flowed easy and natural, as if they had known each other longer than 30 minutes. As Naomi left the hospital that afternoon, Seattle looked different. The same city, but somehow brighter, more open, full of possibilities she had stopped believing in. She called her father from the lobby. Dad, I got a job. A real one. His relief was audible even through the phone. Oh, thank God, sweetheart. Tell me everything. She did. She told him about the accident and the man and the offer that seemed too good to be true. She told him about starting Monday, about health insurance and a salary that would cover rent and his medical bills and maybe even groceries that were not just pasta. I am so proud of you. His voice cracked slightly. Your mother would be too. After hanging up, Naomi stood in the hospital lobby watching people come and go, families reuniting, doctors rushing between emergencies, life continuing its complicated dance of joy and sorrow. And for the first time in months, she felt like she was part of it again, like she mattered. Like stopping on that rainy sidewalk had not been the end of her story, but the beginning of something new. Something she could not quite name yet, but could feel taking shape like dawn breaking over water. She did not know that Julian was watching her from his window 6 floors up, that he had asked Victoria to make sure she got home safely, that he was already thinking about her in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the quiet strength he had seen in her eyes. Neither of them knew yet that saving his life had been the easy part. That learning to trust each other would be harder. That falling in love would be the biggest risk of all. But that was still to come. For now, there was just this moment, this beginning, this first fragile thread connecting two lives that had collided in rain and blood and unexpected grace. Monday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. Naomi stood in front of Hart Technologies wearing a navy blazer she had bought from a thrift store and pressed until it looked almost new. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed through the revolving doors into a lobby that smelled like coffee and ambition. Everything was glass and chrome and possibility. Victoria met her at reception with the efficiency of someone who had orchestrated 1,000 first days. She handed Naomi an employee badge and a tablet already loaded with project files. Your office is on the 7th floor. Small, but it has a view. Julian wanted to make sure you had natural light for design work. He is back at work already. Naomi asked, surprised. The accident had been less than 2 weeks ago. Victoria's expression flickered with something between admiration and concern. He discharged himself 3 days ago against medical advice. The man does not know how to rest. She led Naomi to the elevator. Fair warning, he will probably stop by your office today. He likes to personally welcome new foundation staff. The office was indeed small but beautiful. A desk by the window overlooking Pike Place Market, shelves waiting to be filled, a drafting table in the corner with fresh paper and pencils that had never been sharpened. On the desk sat a small succulent in a ceramic pot with a note in clean handwriting. For new beginnings. Welcome to the team. Julian. Naomi touched the plant's thick leaves and felt something warm unfold in her chest. Something that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with being seen. The foundation they built together. The first week passed in a blur of meetings and site visits. Naomi discovered that community outreach meant listening to people who had been ignored by city planners for decades. It meant standing in vacant lots and imagining playgrounds. It meant translating the language of architecture into the language of hope. Julian appeared in her office on Wednesday afternoon, still moving carefully but no longer wearing bandages. He leaned against her door frame with his arms crossed, watching her sketch designs for a community center in South Seattle. You have good instincts. His voice made her jump. She had not heard him approach. You scared me. She set down her pencil and turned to face him. Should you even be here? Victoria says. You were supposed to rest for another month. Victoria worries too much. He smiled and moved into the office, studying her sketches. Besides, I heal faster when I have something to work toward. These designs are excellent, by the way. You captured exactly what the neighborhood asked for. They told me what they needed. I just drew it. Naomi felt heat rise to her cheeks under his scrutiny. It is nothing special. It is everything special. Julian sat in the chair across from her desk, moving with the careful deliberation of someone still healing. Most architects impose their vision on a community. You let the community speak through you. That is rare. They talked for an hour about the project, about incorporating green spaces and gathering areas, about making architecture serve people instead of ego. The conversation felt easy and natural, like picking up a thread they had started in his hospital room and had been waiting to continue. Before leaving, Julian paused at her door. Naomi, thank you again. Not just for that day in the rain. For this. For bringing something real back to this work. I had forgotten what that felt like. After he left, she sat staring at her sketches without seeing them. Her heart was doing something complicated and dangerous, something that felt like falling. The moment, everything shifted. 3 weeks into her new job, the foundation held its quarterly meeting. Naomi presented her community center designs to the board, her voice steady despite the butterflies rioting in her stomach. When she finished, The room erupted in approving nods and questions that showed genuine interest. Julian caught her afterward in the hallway. That was impressive. You handled the board like you have been doing this for years. I was terrified the entire time. She laughed, relief making her giddy, could not tell at all. He hesitated, then added, "Listen, the team usually goes out for dinner after these meetings. Would you like to join us? No pressure. Just a celebration of good work." She almost said no, almost made an excuse about being tired or having plans, but something in his expression stopped her, something hopeful and vulnerable that made her brave. "I would like that." "Yes." The restaurant was a small Italian place in Capitol Hill with red checkered tablecloths and candles that cast warm shadows across the walls. The foundation team filled. A long table near the back, voices overlapping in laughter and easy conversation. Naomi found herself seated next to Julian, their shoulders almost touching in the crowded space. Wine flowed freely. Stories were exchanged. Someone told an embarrassing tale about Julian falling asleep during a budget meeting, and he laughed without ego, comfortable being human in front of his team. Naomi relaxed into the warmth of it all, feeling herself belong in a way she had not felt in months. As the evening wore on, people began to leave in pairs and groups. Soon it was just Naomi and Julian sharing the last of a bottle of wine while the waiter cleaned tables around them. "Can I ask you something?" Julian's voice was quieter, now intimate in the way late nights allow. "Why architecture? What drew you to it?" Naomi swirled the wine in her glass, thinking, "My mom died when I was 12. Cancer. After she was gone, my dad and I moved into this tiny apartment. Everything felt small and sad and closed in." She paused, remembering. "Then one day I walked past this building. It was a library with huge windows that let in all this light. I went inside and it felt like I could breathe again, like the space itself was giving me permission to hope. So you wanted to create that for others." Julian's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I wanted to build spaces that told people they mattered, that they deserved beauty and light and room to grow." She smiled self-consciously. "It sounds naive when I say it out loud. It sounds like the most important reason I've ever heard." He reached across the table and his fingers brushed hers, just for a moment but long enough to send electricity racing up her arm. "Naomi, I need to tell you something." Her breath caught. "Okay. When I woke up in that hospital and they told me what you did, I thought it was just gratitude I felt. Appreciation for a stranger who stopped when no one else would." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But these past few weeks, working with you, watching you bring compassion to everything you touch, it has become something more than gratitude." The restaurant felt very quiet suddenly, very small. Just the two of them and candlelight and the weight of words about to change everything. "Julian." She whispered his name like a prayer. "You can tell me to stop," he said quietly. "You can tell me this is inappropriate, that I am your employer, and you are my employee, and there are lines we should not cross. I will respect that completely. But I need you to know, you have become the best part of my days, not because you saved my life, because of who you are." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. Happy ones this time. Grateful ones. "I thought I was imagining it. The way you look at me, the way my heart does this stupid hopeful thing every time you walk into a room. You were not imagining it." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. A touch so gentle it felt like a question being asked. "So what do we do about it?" She thought about all the reasons this was complicated. The power dynamic, the newness of her job, the fact that fairy tales did not happen to girls like her. Then she thought about the moment on that rainy sidewalk when she had chosen compassion over self-preservation. How that single choice had led her here, to this table, to this man. to this impossible, beautiful possibility. We figure it out together, she said finally, carefully. One day at a time. Julian smiled then, the kind of smile that made her understand why people wrote poems about joy. I can work with that. They left the restaurant, walking close but not touching, aware of the delicate thing growing between them. Julian insisted on getting her a car home, but she convinced him to walk with her to the corner instead. Seattle's. Streets were quieter at night, the city's sharp edges softened by darkness and streetlights. At the corner where they would part ways, Julian turned to face her fully. Thank you, Naomi, for everything, for stopping that day, for taking this job, for giving me a chance to know you. Thank you for seeing me, not just as the person who helped you, but as myself. He lifted his hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Can I see you again? Outside of work. Properly, like a date. Her heart was racing now, exactly like a date. She pretended to consider it, biting back a smile. I suppose I could make room in my schedule. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. This weekend. Let me take you somewhere that does not involve project proposals or board meetings. It is a date then. Saturday arrived bright and cold. Julian picked her up in a car that was nice but not ostentatious, wearing jeans and a sweater that made him look younger and more relaxed than she had ever seen him. They drove north to the Skagit Valley, where tulip fields stretched in ribbons of color across the landscape. They walked through rows of red and yellow blooms, their breath visible in the spring air. Julian told her about growing up in foster care, about building his first company from nothing, about the loneliness of success. Naomi told him about her father's illness, about the fear of losing him, about the shame of poverty in a city that worshipped wealth. They shared the kinds of truths people only tell when they sense safety in another person, when they believe they might be understood instead of judged. At sunset, they sat on a bench overlooking the fields. The sky burned orange and pink and gold, painting the world in colors that felt like hope made visible. I am falling for you. Julian said it simply, without preamble. I know it is fast. I know we should probably be more careful. But I have spent my whole life being careful and strategic, and it has left me successful, but alone. He turned to look at her. You make me want to be brave in different ways. Naomi took his hand, lacing their fingers together. I am falling for you too. It terrifies me, but it feels right in a way nothing has felt right in a long time. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise, the kind of kiss that tasted like new beginnings and second chances. When they pulled apart, the stars were starting to appear in the darkening sky. On the drive back to Seattle, Naomi's phone rang, her father's number. She answered quickly, worry flashing through her. Dad, is everything okay? Better than okay, sweetheart. The treatment is working. The doctors say I am responding well. His voice was stronger than it had been in months. I wanted you to know. I am going to be fine. She closed her eyes, relief washing over her in waves. That is wonderful, Dad. That is the best news. After hanging up, she turned to Julian with tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, grateful tears. He pulled the car over and held her while she cried, his arms solid and warm and safe. Everything is going to be all right, he murmured into her hair. For both of us. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Naomi believed it. Believed that sometimes doing the right thing did not cost everything. Sometimes it led you exactly where you needed to be. Sometimes stopping to help a stranger in the rain was not the end of your story, but the beginning. The beginning of love, of healing, of building something beautiful together from the broken pieces both of them had been carrying alone. The city lights of Seattle appeared on the horizon like promises being kept. Julian reached for her hand across the console and she took it, holding on as they drove toward whatever came next. Together. The end.